Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we'll be watching another part of the Ottoman History and Battle playlist from Kings and Generals, and this one is The Rise of Skanderbeg. I don't think I ever heard about Skanderbeg. The rise, so it implies that it's a person, so let's just jump into it and learn. What? Who is Skanderbeg? Everything was working, cool. I got a coffee as well.
It's a hot summer night in the lush Albanian plain of Torvioll. From his fortified military camp, Skanderbeg,
I'm pretty sure there was no mention of Skanderbeg in the previous one.
Scans the plain below in great detail,
I
knowing
forgot.
that by sunrise it would be home to a great struggle. Off in the distance lay the Ottoman camp, whose forces were double the size of his army. Knowing that the fate of his fellow countrymen was on the line, the Albanian lord made his last preparations for the battle to come. He would either die as a traitorous rebel or live to become a national hero. Welcome to our latest episode on the history of the Ottoman Empire, in which we will discuss the tumultuous early reign of Mehmed II and the rise of Albania's most famous national hero. And for those of you wondering where Albania even is, here's a neat way to learn about the geography of Earth and a load of other places. It's our sponsor for this video, Mova Globes. These globes rotate, seemingly of their own accord, with no power source. I
guess I couldn't be like, oh, Albania is next to... Is it Moldova? Is that region there, isn't it? Ukraine, Moldova? No, I think I have it wrong actually. So,
because they absorb solar energy from the room's ambient light to power a magnetic rotation system hidden inside. This seemingly magical effect is produced by a newly developed first-of-its-kind technology. The mechanism is invisible, but the effect is clear to see. The globes rotate with no intervention from you, or if you pick them up, they will rotate in your hand. Basically, Mova Globes just work on their own and look good doing it.
That is really cool.
As you've probably noticed, it doesn't actually need to be a globe of Earth. They have plenty of other planets to choose from, and even a few things that aren't planets, with over 40 designs in all. Any of them will make for a great decoration and a special gift for the person who has everything. Go to movaglobes.com to see the full selection, link in the description. Then get 10% off a 6 or 8.5 inch Mova
Sorry guys,
globe
I'm kind
by
of
using
interested
our
how
code
much are they.
Kings and
I'm
Generals.
just gonna pause this here and actually gonna go to the because I'm very curious. Because this is a really cool thing to have, I think. I'm a sucker for stuff like this, so move on. Okay, let's open this here in the new tab. So Earth with clouds, Jupiter globe, and a thick terrestrial white globe, Van Gogh or irises. Okay. Ooh, Mars looks cool. Here. Mercury, Neptune, the Earth, Titan moon. Does the Titan look so cool? Really? That's so cool. Basketball is just kinda lame. Anything that's like planets or something like that. Also that the whole solar system. Acrylic bay crystal base. Okay. Blue and gold. Green and gold. Which one's better? Blue or gold? Green? Let's try this one. Oh, you don't shop from them, huh? Okay, let's see. Shop Amazon. Yeah, I wanted one specific one. Why isn't... this is .com, is it? Okay. I don't really use .com, okay. Best sellers, all globes. Oh, they have a lot of them, yeah. 200, 300. They are not cheap. But they're still cool. Okay, let's go back to the actual the rise of the Skanderbeg, because that's what we're watching today. And let's keep going. This is through the sponsor.
The unexpected Ottoman victory at the Battle of Varna had altered the fate of the Balkans overnight. With the untimely demise of King Władysław III of Hungary and Poland during the engagement, much of Eastern Europe descended into a political interregnum. The battle also had re-established Edirne as a significant regional power once more, as the state avenged its humiliating military defeats back during the Long Campaign in 1443. The news of Murad's triumph lifted the morale of many in the Ottoman court and the Muslim citizens of the capital. To many, the invincible aura surrounding Hunyadi and his knights had been shattered. Nonetheless, this period of joy and celebration was to be short, as not long after the battle, Murad returned to his life in retirement at his palace in Manisa, handing the throne over to his young and inexperienced son. Moreover, it was not known if Hungary or Poland would initiate a crusade of revenge in the subsequent years in retaliation for the death of their young monarch. Only time would tell if the feeble and unproven government of Mehmed II had the capabilities to thwart such a threat in the future once again. While Edirne celebrated their military triumph, the remnants of the Crusader host under John Hunyadi had urgently retreated north towards the Danube during the days after Varna. However, upon reaching the river, Hunyadi was captured by Wallachian soldiers and imprisoned on Vlad II's orders. As Vlad's son Mircea had taken part in the failed crusade, the Wallachian voivode originally planned to hand over Hunyadi to the Ottoman Sultan in exchange for re-establishing friendly ties with Edirne. However, after numerous threats of war from Hungary, Hunyadi was eventually released and brought to Buda by the turn of the year. This whole ordeal had left Wallachia in a precarious predicament, as its ruler was now diplomatically isolated from both of its major neighbors, thus facing the risk of potential invasion from his north and south. Unlike Murad's magnificent reception in Edirne, Hunyadi returned home to political instability and wide-scale hysteria. After Varna, the Hungarian realm was left leaderless, so a royal diet was held in the spring of 1445 to elect a new sovereign. After much debate, the 6-year-old Ladislaus V was eventually chosen to rule, but this decision opened up old wounds from the past. The young monarch's guardian, King Frederick III of Germany, refused to surrender the boy king to Buda without a fight, as he was his most prized political prisoner. He also expressed the royal diet's hypocrisy on the matter, as it was the same diet that had denied Ladislaus's right to become king of Hungary after the death of his father back in 1439. This decision resulted in a bloody war between Hungary and the German king that was to last until 1447. This sudden outbreak of war hindered Hunyadi's war effort against Edirne in the years immediately after Varna. However, the conflict did give the Hungarian magnate the opportunity to rise up the ranks in the capital once more, as he was declared the official regent of Ladislaus by the royal diet, thus informally becoming the ruler of Hungary in the coming years. As Hungary was sucked into a prolonged war, the diplomatically isolated ruler of Wallachia, Vlad II, made plans to strike at Edirne before Sultan Mehmed could retaliate against him. Vlad first allied himself with the Burgundian element of the Crusader fleet, which was still active in the Black Sea. The Wallachian ruler then besieged the significant Ottoman Danube fortress towns of Giurgiu, Tutrakan, Ruse, and Silistra in 1445. The following military campaign proved to be a successful one, as the Turkish garrisons of the former three towns were taken by surprise by the Wallachian invasion, and were thus massacred to the last man. With Mehmed's government unable to respond decisively to the Wallachian invasion, a hasty peace was concluded between Edirne and Targovista. In return for continuing to pay a yearly tribute to the Ottoman capital, Vlad's territorial conquests were acknowledged by the Sultan. Although he had won a surprising victory against the Turks, Vlad's appetite for expansion did not stop at the Danube. The Wallachian voivode began meddling in the politics of his northern neighbour, the Principality of Moldavia, by supporting the Polish-aligned Roman II over the Hungarian-aligned Peter III during a local civil war. This interference in Hungarian interests caused many in Buda to turn on Vlad, as he was already seen as an unpredictable and unreliable figure in Balkan politics. All of this culminated in 1447, when Hunyadi invaded Wallachia in a short campaign and installed Vlad's cousin, Vladislav II, on the throne as a Hungarian vassal. Vlad II Dracul, the man who had found himself playing an unwinnable balancing game between Buda and Edirne for the last decade, was killed during his escape alongside his son Mircea.
Yeah, so far pretty confusing everything. Is my keyboard gone again? Seems like it. Okay. Where am I? And to do here. So it's a bit. I can't say I remember much from that part of Polish history in regards of why was there like distinction between Polish aligned and then Hungarian aligned. The thing I was always taught was basically that that was quick. That Poland and Hungary was always great boss, you know, great friends and all that. So I'm kind of surprised about that now, because that kind of makes it sound like they were fighting, despite the fact that they just had they shared the king. And I kind of wonder, how does that work, sharing a king like that? Never really thought about it before, but basically you have one country to rule and there's another country to rule, and it's like, how is he splitting that? You know, it's not that easy to rule the country. So yeah, let's go back.
While the Ottomans were preoccupied with the Crusader forces of Europe, a new significant threat in the Western Balkans had emerged in the form of Albania. After the military defeats
I was
during the
absolutely
long
wrong about
campaign,
where Albania is. For some reason I was thinking it's closer to Moldavia. But obviously not. So yeah.
of 1443, an Ottoman provincial governor of Albanian descent named Skanderbeg, known today as Skanderbeg, had deserted his command and made plans to instigate a significant rebellion in his homeland.
So they did talk about him, but they were using the other name. That's what happened.
Originally born as George Castrioti, Skanderbeg had seen Ottoman armies conquering his country firsthand back in 1417. Being the son of a prominent Albanian feudal lord, he was sent to Edirne as a political hostage at a young age in order to receive a full Ottoman education along with many other influential Albanian boys. It was expected that Skanderbeg and other sons of notable Albanians would become Ottoman military leaders one day and serve in their own local community.
Yeah, I just read this because it says like Skanderbeg's name originates from Alexander the Great, as Iskander is the Turkish form of Alexander, while Beg, meaning lord, was his title in the Ottoman ranks. Okay, so Alexander, Lord Alexander. Okay, fair enough.
Symbols of Edirne's cultural supremacy. However, this was not meant to be for a particular member of the House of Castrioti. Following the path of the fabled Arminius, Skanderbeg could not forget about his original upbringing, so he was fiercely
I have a weird question. Now this is gonna be weird. This guy looks like he worked out a lot in the gym. I wonder if the actual knights were like that, as big like that. I know there's some men are obviously big and kind of naturally like that, but do all knights were always like that big and stuff like that? Is lifting the sword so kind of like muscle building experience? I don't know.
determined to free his people from the Ottoman yoke. He began his rebellion.
Sorry, I just have to say it because basically if you look at like those the way how men were portrayed and how that, you know, those sexy men in like 70 or 80 years ago, like no 50s and 60s, they were never that big, like that muscular and stuff like that. So it's the same thing with the tan for women. Like 100 years ago, being tanned meant you're poor, and being like really fair skinned meant you are not poor because you don't have to work in the sun. So like that, obviously that all changed. And the same thing was, as I remember, was the same thing with musculature on men, because if you were muscular, that means you working hard physically. So that means you're poor. I might be mistaken, but that's what it is. But if you look at, let's say, men from the actors and stuff from 50s and 60s and 40s, they were never that muscular like those really popular actors now. So it's like, that's obviously our perception of beauty changed a lot, but how old was like 500 years ago? 400? That's even not 500, it's more than that. So it's like nearly 600 years ago. I wonder.
By first capturing the fortress town of Kruye in 1443, by tricking its local Turkish garrison into opening their gates with a forged letter from the Sultan.
I'm gonna keep going talking about it because I've seen this one AI portrait of a Polish king, Jan III Sobieski, who was actually, he might be mentioned later. I don't know, because that was in the, no, never mind. Basically what happened, it was that the way how he is very important king in Polish history, so pretty much there is no way that that Polish people don't know how he looks. There's a loads of portraits about him. He's important in the fact that he was a good leader, but as well about his the relationship with his wife and the letters and stuff like that. So basically, we kind of know a lot about them. There's a loads of portraits of them, how they looked and stuff like that. And the one that the AI made, it was absolutely ridiculous, because it wasn't looking nothing like the actual king that we know from history. Like, I know the portraits were probably kind of like, you know, like make it nicer and all that, but still they would resemble the actual person, when that AI portrait would looking nothing like the king that I know from history, like from pictures, obviously, not the actual person, because I'm not that old. So I'm kind of wondering now how that's gonna, all that AI stuff gonna be working on our perception of history in the future. If you follow my way of thinking, like, it's just basically gonna be more and more stuff that AI bringing from, and it's just like from the vast depths of internet and stuff like that, and basically a lot of people are gonna be taking a lot of stuff that it's like absolutely fictional as a reality. And do I'm making sense? I don't know if I'm making sense. Okay, let's just go with this.
In the following months, Skanderbeg captured the surrounding fortresses around Kruye and even began forming a grand military and political alliance with the other disenfranchised Albanian noble families of the region, commonly known as the League of Leisure. Back during the rebellions of the 1430s, much of the Albanian nobility had been politically divided.
Because you see the portrait here? So guys, this guy here is nothing like the guy who was shown on the horse. I just like watching my, you know, like history and stuff when it's actual kind of like true to the history, and maybe people that they, you know, like this is actual historical video. It's nothing like, I don't know, Bridgerton, that it's highly inspired by history, but it's not. So it's like I can, the fiction and stuff, I can I have no problem with accepting the fact that the people are totally changed, the looks and stuff, even if they are real in history, but this is like total fiction and stuff. But if we're talking about actual history and stuff like that, that's not the same thing. They should, yeah, should.
Resulting in the more numerous Ottomans systematically defeating each noble house one by one. But now everything was different. The creation of the League of Leisure was to be the first time a concerted effort was made to form a united Albanian nation.
Sorry, this is funny. I'll be just chatting. You see the place here? There's a system here. Sopot. There's actually a seat. Oh, here. No, what I'm doing here. This one here. There's a town in Poland called Sopot as well, and it's in the seaside. It's really nice. Just if you're ever interested.
Upon uniting their combined fiscal and military resources against the Ottomans, the League members proclaimed Skanderbeg their commander-in-chief and new lord of Albania. Soon after, the new Albanian lord reconverted back to his native faith of Christianity after being originally converted to Islam during his days as a political hostage in Edirne. It was the final action that earned him the nickname of Iskander the Traitor throughout many Muslim circles. During the cessation of hostilities with the Crusaders during the summer of 1444, Murad II had sent a provincial army of around 25,000 strong under the command of his much-trusted general Ali Pasha to crush the Albanian revolt. The general's target was the town of Kruye, the epicenter of the rebellion. Mustering 15,000 troops to face his first genuine test as a military leader, Skanderbeg marched northeast to meet the Ottoman host on the narrow plain of Torvioll near the Albanian border. During the night before the battle, he stationed a few thousand of his cavalry under his nephew Hamza Kastrioti in the forests surrounding the plain. Meanwhile, the overconfident Ottoman provincial army celebrated and feasted into the early morning, as they thought an easy victory was already assured. After all, what were a few thousand Albanian peasants turned soldiers compared to the mighty armoured soldiers of Islam? By the early hours of June 29th, both armies made ready for battle. Using his time serving in the Sultan's armies to his benefit, Skanderbeg stationed his army in a traditional Turkish crescent formation, overlooking the plain, in the hopes of flanking around his enemy. The Albanian lord stationed himself in the centre, alongside various units of light infantry and archers, while his two flanks consisted of infantry and cavalry. Due to the battlefield's narrow terrain, the Turkish army was unable to use its numerical superiority to its advantage, so Ali Pasha organized his host into 3 narrow battle lines. The Ottoman general stationed himself at the center of the middle battle line, alongside a small unit of Janissaries and Tamali Sipahi heavy cavalry on his flanks. In the vanguard line were the Akinji light horsemen, while in the reserve line were various units of provincial infantry. The battle began with the first 2 Ottoman battle lines charging directly into the rebel army. What ensued was a bloody but not decisive melee, in which the Albanians barely held out against the Turkish onslaught. This showcase of bravery and defiance surprised Ali Pasha, so he ordered his reserves into the fray as a means to finish off the rebels. Unbeknownst to him, he was falling right into Skanderbeg's trap. Seeing that his foe had deployed his last remaining troops into the battle, the Albanian lord ordered his hidden cavalry in the surrounding forests to charge the Ottoman rear. In a single action, the entire Turkish army was surrounded. In addition to the surprise cavalry charge, the Albanian crescent formation proved vital in funneling the Turkish host towards the center of the battlefield, better allowing for Skanderbeg's men to flank around Ali Pasha's men. What followed was a great massacre of the invader army that saw their leader barely escaping the field of battle with his life. Around 2/3 of the Ottoman host was killed and/or captured by the end of the day. The unexpected Albanian victory at the Battle of Torvioll was to be the catalyst for Skanderbeg's later rise to fame. In the direct wake of the battle, a wave of enthusiasm spread across the Albanian countryside, resulting in many enlisting their services in the armies of the new Lord of Albania. Like John Hunyadi before him, Skanderbeg became well known to many in the wider Christian world, his name becoming synonymous with bravery and defiance against an ever-growing Ottoman Sultanate. In the following years, his armies continued to utilize guerrilla tactics in the struggle for independence.
I mean, well, yes, you're fighting for independence. Usually that's what happens. You're fighting with the smaller power, you don't have that much of weapons and that much of people, so you can't really go head on against people that you fight trying to get the independence from. So you have to do the guerrilla tactics. I don't think there was any independence wars, like fights and stuff like that, without using that. But then I'm not sure because I don't know that much about history. Maybe there is. If someone knows about the actual independence fight, well, what about Americans? I think they probably were using guerrilla too. And anyway, American history is a bit different because basically there were Americans, so there was a colony, so there was mostly American and things like that. So they were fighting a bit different. So there was actually more of them. So I kind of contradicting my own words from earlier on, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, another long ad. So I'll see you in a second. Bye. Hello again, we're back! Let's jump into... Oh, see, I was talking before. I even went away, so I was like, I have nothing else to add.
Seeking revenge for its humiliating defeat at Torvioll, Edirne sent another army into Albania during the fall of 1445, this time led by Firuz Pasha. However, Skanderbeg again defeated this numerically superior army at the Battle of Mokra, after trapping his foe in a narrow valley. This time around, the Turkish army took over 3,000 casualties, which included Firuz Pasha himself. Yet another army was sent into the region a year later under the command of Mustafa Pasha, but his forces also proved unsuccessful, with Skanderbeg defeating them at the Battle of Otanete, a contest which resulted in over 5,000 dead Turks. What had initially seemed like a minor and insignificant revolt had turned into a logistical nightmare for an already dysfunctional Ottoman government under Mehmet II. With each passing victory, Skanderbeg gained more followers at home.
I sometimes wonder how many people would be currently on Earth if there would be no wars and plagues and stuff like that. If you know what I mean. Basically, the fact that the people that they died over there in that battle, the most likely were kind of young men, so they didn't have children after they died, because obviously how can you have a child without when dying? And all of the people in history, if there would be no deaths like that, those kind of like war deaths and stuff, how many people would be actually now? Not 8 billion, but probably like, I say, I don't know, I would be guessing like 5-6 times more? I wonder how would that look.
And more admiration from Christian Europe. In the 2 years after Murad II's abdication, the Central Ottoman state was severely paralysed in decision-making regarding the wars against Wallachia and Albania. This indecision was directly caused by various political factions arguing in the capital over the correct course of action to take
Mehmed
after
II
the
was
victory
really
of
young,
Varna.
wasn't it?
Mehmed II and his close advisors and fellow friends, Zanos Pasha and Shebetin Pasha, had advocated besieging Constantinople, as they thought the time was now to finally put an end to the Roman state, which had only just recently conspired with the Crusaders. In contrast, Grand Vizier Jandali Halil Pasha advocated for making military preparations for another potential Crusader invasion in the Balkans. Having personally witnessed the failed siege of the Roman capital back in 1422, Halil thought such a military operation was too risky while Hunyadi was still on the chessboard. According to him, the Ottoman state could not afford to fight a two-front war in its current economic and military condition. For over 6 years, the armies of Edirne had been on active campaign year after year, thus putting enormous strains on the central treasury and the general health of the military. However, the 14-year-old Ottoman Sultan was adamant about his desire to conquer the Roman capital, which was his childhood dream.
It was his childhood dream when he was 14. To me, that's still a child, but well.
Seeing Mehmed's personal ambitions for Constantinople as a vital threat to the tranquility and security of the state, Halil Pasha orchestrated a Janissary rebellion against the Sultan in 1446, in an attempt to restore the Sultan's father back to power. The state's recent debasement of coinage had already disgruntled many within the ranks of the Janissaries. Thus, its leaders supported the Grand Vizier as a means to bring down the Sultan's key advisors from power. However, upon raising the banners of rebellion, members of the elite corps began indiscriminately plundering the capital, and even stormed into the palace of Shebetin Pasha. The Ottoman Pasha barely escaped to the royal palace with his life, as a violent mob chased after him on the streets of Edirne. It had become clear even to the Grand Vizier that he had lost control of the rebellion, for some in the ranks had even begun chanting the traitorous name of Orhan Çelebi, who still resided in Constantinople as the Byzantine emperor's political hostage. Knowing he needed to restore order, Halil Pasha sent out a letter to Murad to come to the Ottoman capital at once. Upon hearing the destructive news from the capital, the former sultan rushed to the aid of his son and much trusted political colleague. Shortly after entering Edirne, Murad re-established order, as unlike his son, many still saw him as the true wielder of political authority within the state. The first rebellion of its kind in Ottoman history ended with a pay raise for the Janissaries in return for them retreating back to their barracks. Once the dust had settled, Murad was successfully convinced by Halil Pasha to retake his seat on the throne and once more restore authority to the Sultanate. While his son and his advisors were out on a hunting expedition near the capital, Murad seized the royal palace and proclaimed himself Ottoman Sultan for the second time. When he returned from his expedition, a shocked Mehmed could do nothing but kiss the hand of his father and accept his dethronement. After the political coup, Mehmed and his followers were exiled to Manisa, where the former child sultan continued his education as a statesman by becoming the governor of the local region. With Edirne again politically united under an experienced leader, Turkish war drums began playing once more, as Murad made ready for an eventual clash in Europe. According to the new sultan, the military setbacks of the last 2 years had to be avenged at all costs. In the next episode of our series on the early history of the Ottomans, we will look at the continuing wars between Edirne and Buda, culminating in yet another bloody clash on the Kosovo field. To make sure you don't miss it, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube members.
Okay, start so far, Game of Thrones. We'll start before the winds of winter. 3 hours long, nearly 4, huh? Yeah, so what I wanna say is, I wonder would everything go a bit differently if the Mara didn't give power to his really young son? Because, well, didn't he take over when he was like 10? And obviously now in this case he was only 14. So it's like, whoa, something flying here. That's very young to be like... I know that was kind of like a normal back in the day, but still doesn't mean that it should happen like that. Like, I know that most of the time that would be the case when the father, the ruler, died and then the child would take over, because that was like in the line. But this is, he actually just abdicated and he gave the power to his really, really young son. So I wonder if everything would go totally different. Anyway, we have another one in 2 weeks, and thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye!